Welcome, brave souls, to Dreadful Diaries, where the shadows whisper secrets and the night holds untold horrors. If you crave the thrill of the unknown, make sure to subscribe and join our community of fellow horror enthusiasts. Now, dim the lights, grab a blanket, and let's dive into our first tale of terror.
It was a chilly autumn afternoon when Sarah Thompson returned home from work, her mind preoccupied with the mundane details of her day. As she approached her front porch, she noticed a small, unmarked package sitting on the welcome mat. It was wrapped in brown paper, tied with a simple twine, and bore no return address. Curiosity piqued, she picked it up and carried it inside. Once inside her cozy living room, Sarah set the package on the coffee table and examined it closely. There was something unsettling about it, but she brushed off the feeling. After all, she loved surprises. With a quick flick of her knife, she cut the twine and peeled back the paper. Inside lay an old, dusty doll, its porcelain face cracked and its glassy eyes staring blankly ahead. The doll wore a faded blue dress, and its hair was a tangled mess of dark curls. Creepy, Sarah muttered to herself, but she couldn't help but feel a strange connection to the doll. She placed it on a shelf, thinking it might add a touch of character to her otherwise bland decor. That night, as she settled into bed, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She glanced at the doll, now sitting on the shelf, and shivered. The way its eyes seemed to follow her made her uneasy. Shaking off the sensation, she turned off the light and drifted into a restless sleep. Over the next few days, strange occurrences began to unfold. Sarah would find the doll in different positions each morning, sometimes facing the wall, other times turned slightly toward her bed. She dismissed it as her imagination, but the feeling of unease grew stronger. One evening, while watching television, she caught a glimpse of movement out of the corner of her eye. The doll had shifted again, its head tilted as if it were listening. Determined to uncover the truth, Sarah began researching the doll. She discovered that it had once belonged to a girl named Emily, who had mysteriously disappeared from their town over 50 years ago. The more she read, the more she learned about a series of unsolved disappearances that had plagued the area, all linked to the same time period. Each victim had been a young girl, last seen playing near the woods that bordered her neighborhood. As Sarah delved deeper, she found a local historian who had written extensively about the disappearances. When she shared her story about the doll, the historian's expression turned grave. "That doll is said to be cursed," he explained. "It's believed to be a vessel for the spirits of the lost girls. They say it can move on its own, seeking to draw attention to their plight." Fear gripped Sarah as she realized the implications. The doll wasn't just a relic, it was a connection to the past, a reminder of the lives that had been snuffed out too soon. That night, she decided to confront the doll. She placed it on the table and spoke aloud, "If you're trying to tell me something, I'm listening." To her shock, the doll's head tilted slightly, as if acknowledging her words. Heart racing, Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She closed her eyes and focused, willing the spirit to communicate. Suddenly, she was overwhelmed by a vision, a flash of a girl in a blue dress, running through the woods, laughter echoing in the air, followed by a chilling silence. The next day, Sarah returned to the historian, sharing her experience. He suggested a séance to communicate with the spirit of Emily and the other girls. Reluctantly, Sarah agreed, feeling a mix of fear and responsibility. That evening, she gathered with the historian and a few locals who had also been touched by the disappearances. As they sat in a circle, candles flickering, the atmosphere grew heavy with anticipation. The historian called upon the spirits, and the room filled with an eerie stillness. Suddenly, the doll began to shake, and a cold breeze swept through the room. The lights flickered, and a voice echoed, soft yet clear, "Help us." Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she realized the weight of the spirit's plea. They were trapped, their stories untold, their fates unknown. With newfound determination, she vowed to uncover the truth behind each disappearance, to give a voice to the lost girls. In the weeks that followed, Sarah dedicated herself to researching the cases, interviewing families, and gathering evidence. With the help of the historian and the community, she began to piece together the puzzle. Each discovery brought her closer to the truth, and with each revelation, the doll seemed to grow quieter, as if the spirits were finally finding peace. One night, after a particularly long day of research, Sarah returned home to find the doll sitting on her bed, its eyes closed. She smiled, feeling a sense of closure. The next morning, she awoke to find the doll gone. In its place was a single white flower resting on her bedside table. A symbol of peace and gratitude. Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her. She knew that the spirits of Emily and the other girls had finally found their rest. With the help of the community, she had organized a memorial service to honor the lost girls, bringing together families and friends who had been affected by the tragedies. The event was filled with tears, laughter, and shared memories, allowing the community to heal together. As the sun set on the day of the memorial, Sarah stood at the edge of the woods where the girls had once played. She placed the white flower on a small altar made of stones, surrounded by candles and photographs of the missing girls. In that moment, she felt a profound connection to the past, as if the spirits were there with her, thanking her for giving them a voice. In the weeks that followed, the town began to change. The stories of the lost girls were no longer whispered in fear, they were celebrated, their memories cherished. Sarah became an advocate for missing persons, using her experience to raise awareness and help families find closure. The haunted package that had once brought her fear now served as a catalyst for healing and hope. Though the doll never returned, Sarah felt its presence in her heart. It had been a bridge between the living and the dead, a reminder of the importance of remembering those who had been lost. As she continued her work, she often thought of Emily and the other girls, knowing that they would never be forgotten. Years later, as Sarah stood in front of a new generation of children at a community event, she shared the story of the lost girls and the importance of looking out for one another. The children listened intently, their eyes wide with wonder and empathy. In that moment, Sarah realized that the legacy of the haunted package had transformed into something beautiful, a reminder that even in darkness, there is always a path to light. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the town, Sarah felt a gentle breeze brush against her cheek, as if the spirits were smiling down on her, finally at peace. Ethan Miller was a horror aficionado. His apartment was filled with posters of classic horror films, shelves lined with novels by Stephen King and H.P. Lovecraft, and an impressive collection of horror memorabilia. So when he stumbled upon a subscription service that promised a monthly box filled with horror-themed goodies, he couldn't resist. The website boasted that each box contained unique items, from collectibles to exclusive artwork, all curated to thrill and chill. The first box arrived a week later. Excited, Ethan tore it open to find a vintage-looking horror movie poster, a set of creepy coasters shaped like tombstones, and a small, intricately carved wooden box. Inside the box was a note that read, "Embrace the darkness." He chuckled, thinking it was all part of the fun. He hung the poster on his wall, placed the coasters on his coffee table, and set the wooden box on his shelf. the second box arrived the following month. This time, it contained a collection of eerie candles, each labeled with a different name: fear, despair, nightmare. Along with the candles was a small, leather-bound journal with blank pages. Ethan was intrigued but didn't think much of it. He lit the fear candle that night, enjoying the flickering light as he settled in to watch a classic horror film. As the months passed, the boxes continued to arrive, each one more unsettling than the last. The third box included a jar of what appeared to be preserved insects, while the fourth contained a strange, antique mirror that seemed to distort reflections. Ethan began to feel a sense of unease, but he brushed it off as part of the horror experience. After all, he loved the thrill of the unknown. However, things took a darker turn with the fifth box. Inside, he found a small, ornate dagger and a note that read, "To complete the ritual, you must make a sacrifice." Ethan's heart raced. This was no longer just a fun subscription. It felt like a twisted game. He considered canceling his subscription, but curiosity got the better of him. What kind of ritual were they referring to? Determined to uncover the truth, Ethan began researching the items he had received. He discovered that the subscription service was linked to an ancient cult that believed in harnessing fear and despair to gain power. Each item was a piece of a dark ritual that required a series of sacrifices to be completed. The more he learned, the more he realized that he was in over his head. As the sixth box arrived, Ethan felt a sense of dread wash over him. Inside was a small, tattered book filled with cryptic symbols and incantations. He recognized some of the names from the candles he had received earlier. Panic set in as he realized that the ritual was not just a fictional game, it was real, and he was being drawn into it. That night, Ethan had a nightmare. He dreamt of shadowy figures surrounding him, whispering incantations as they beckoned him to join them. He woke up in a cold sweat. The dagger from the fifth box lying ominously on his bedside table. He knew he had to act quickly. Ethan decided to confront the subscription service. He contacted their customer support, demanding to know what was happening. To his surprise, he received a response almost immediately. The message was chilling: "You have been chosen. Complete the ritual, or face the consequences." Feeling trapped, Ethan realized he had no choice but to finish what had been started. He gathered all the items from the boxes and set them up in his living room, creating a makeshift altar. He lit the candles, their flames flickering ominously, and opened the journal to the first blank page. With trembling hands, he began to write down his fears, pouring his heart into the words. As he wrote, the room grew colder, and shadows danced along the walls. The mirror began to ripple, reflecting not just his image but the dark figures from his dreams. Ethan felt a pull, as if the items were drawing energy from him. He knew he was close to completing the ritual, but at what cost? With the final words written, he picked up the dagger, feeling its weight in his hand. He hesitated, knowing that the sacrifice required was not just physical but emotional. He had to confront his deepest fear, the fear of losing control, of being consumed by darkness. In that moment, he made a choice. Instead of harming himself, he plunged the dagger into the altar, symbolically severing his ties to the darkness. The room erupted in chaos. The candles flickered violently, and the shadows writhed as if in pain. Ethan felt a surge of energy, and for a moment, he thought he might be swallowed whole. But then, a calm washed over him. The shadows receded, and the items on the altar began to crumble into dust. As the last remnants of the ritual disappeared, Ethan collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath. The oppressive weight that had filled his apartment lifted, and the air felt lighter, almost refreshing. He looked around, half expecting the shadows to return, but the room was quiet, the only sound being his own heartbeat. Ethan sat there for a moment, processing what had just happened. The subscription box had been a gateway to something dark and sinister, but he had managed to break free. He felt a mix of relief and exhaustion wash over him. He had faced his fears and emerged on the other side, but he knew he could never return to the life he had before. The next day, Ethan contacted the subscription service one last time, demanding to cancel his subscription and warning them about the dark nature of their offerings. To his surprise, he received no response. It was as if they had vanished into thin air. He felt a shiver run down his spine, realizing that he might not be the only one who had been drawn into their web. Determined to put the experience behind him, Ethan decided to rid himself of the remnants of the boxes. He gathered everything, the posters, the coasters, the candles, the mirror, and the journal, and took them to a nearby lake. Under the cover of darkness, he set them ablaze, watching as the flames consumed the items that had once brought him excitement but had turned into a nightmare. As the fire crackled and the smoke rose into the night sky, Ethan felt a sense of closure. He had faced the darkness and emerged stronger. The flickering flames illuminated his face, and he made a silent vow to never let curiosity lead him down such a treacherous path again. In the weeks that followed, Ethan focused on reclaiming his life. He returned to his love of horror, but this time with a newfound respect for the genre. He began writing his own stories, channeling his experiences into creative outlets rather than allowing them to consume him. He found solace in sharing his tales with friends, warning them of the dangers of delving too deeply into the unknown. One evening, while attending a local horror film festival, Ethan met a group of fellow enthusiasts. They shared stories of their favorite films and books, and he felt a sense of camaraderie that he hadn't experienced in a long time. As he recounted his own harrowing tale, he noticed their expressions shift from amusement to concern. They listened intently, and when he finished, one of them leaned in and whispered, "You're not the first to have a bad experience with that subscription service." Ethan's heart sank. "What do you mean?" The group exchanged glances, and another member spoke up. "There have been rumors about it for years. People have reported strange occurrences after subscribing. Some even claim they were haunted by the items they received." A chill ran down Ethan's spine. He realized that he had narrowly escaped a fate that others might not have. The darkness he had faced was not just a figment of his imagination, it was a real threat that had ensnared others before him. Determined to help, Ethan decided to take action. He collaborated with his new friends to create a blog dedicated to sharing stories of horror experiences, both fictional and real. They aimed to raise awareness about the dangers of obsession and the fine line between curiosity and recklessness. As the blog gained traction, Ethan found a sense of purpose. He used his platform to educate others about the importance of understanding the stories behind the horror, emphasizing that while fear can be thrilling, it should never be taken lightly. He shared his own story as a cautionary tale, encouraging readers to embrace the genre responsibly. Months later, as he sat in his apartment, now filled with books and art that inspired him rather than haunted him, Ethan reflected on his journey. He had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, not just for himself but for others as well. The subscription box had been a catalyst for change, pushing him to confront his fears and ultimately find his voice. And while he would always love horror, he now understood that true. Jake Thompson had been a delivery driver for 3 years, and while most of his shifts were uneventful, the late-night ones always had a certain thrill to them. The quiet streets, the flickering streetlights, and the occasional rustle of leaves created an atmosphere that was both eerie and exhilarating. But tonight felt different. As he pulled into the parking lot of the dispatch center, a chill ran down his spine, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. After a few routine deliveries, Jake received a call that made his heart race. The dispatcher's voice crackled through the radio. "Jake, we've got a special delivery for you. It's a package going to an old house on the outskirts of town. The address is 666 Hollow Road." Jake frowned. He had heard stories about that house, an abandoned place that locals claimed was haunted. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Yeah, it's a big package, and the customer insists it's urgent." "Just be careful, all right," the dispatcher replied, sounding unconcerned. With a resigned sigh, Jake set off toward Hollow Road. The further he drove, the more the trees closed in around him, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. The moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the landscape. As he turned onto Hollow Road, the atmosphere shifted. The air grew heavy, and an unsettling silence enveloped him. When he finally arrived at the house, Jake's heart sank. The structure loomed before him, its windows shattered and the paint peeling away like old skin. Weeds choked the front yard, and the front door hung ajar, creaking softly in the wind. He parked his van and took a deep breath, trying to quell the rising dread in his chest. Grabbing the package, a large, heavy box wrapped in brown paper, he stepped out of the van. The moment his foot hit the ground, a cold breeze swept through the air, sending shivers down his spine. He hesitated, glancing back at his van, but the dispatcher's words echoed in his mind, "It's urgent." With a reluctant resolve, Jake approached the house. As he stepped onto the porch, the wood creaked ominously beneath his weight. He knocked on the door, but there was no response. "Hello?" he called out, his voice trembling slightly. "Delivery for, whoever lives here?" Silence. He pushed the door open, and it swung inward with a groan. The interior was dark, the air thick with dust and the scent of decay. Jake stepped inside, his heart pounding in his chest. "Anyone home?" he called again, but only the sound of his own voice echoed back. As he moved deeper into the house, he felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over him. Shadows danced along the walls, and the temperature dropped sharply. He set the package down on a rickety table and turned to leave, but something caught his eye, a flicker of movement in the corner of the room. Jake squinted into the darkness, and his breath caught in his throat. A figure stood at the far end of the room, shrouded in shadows. It was a woman, her long hair cascading over her shoulders, her face obscured. "Help me," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Fear gripped Jake, but he felt an inexplicable pull toward her. "What do you need?" he asked, his voice shaking. The woman stepped closer, and as she did, the air grew colder. "You must leave this place," she said, her eyes glinting with a sorrowful intensity. "He is coming for you." "Who?" Jake asked, backing away slowly. "The one who trapped me here," she replied, her voice rising in urgency. "He feeds on fear. You must escape before it's too late." Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. The shadows in the room thickened, swirling around him like a living entity. Jake's heart raced as he turned to flee, but the door slammed shut, trapping him inside. Panic surged through him as he pounded on the door, but it wouldn't budge. "Please," he shouted, desperation creeping into his voice. "Let me out." The woman's expression twisted in anguish. You must confront him. Only then can you break the curse. Before he could respond, the shadows coalesced into a dark figure, a man with hollow eyes and a twisted grin. Another delivery, I see, he sneered, his voice echoing with malice. You're just in time for the feast. Jake's instincts kicked in, and he turned to run, but the shadows lunged at him, wrapping around his legs and pulling him down. He fought against them, but they were too strong. The woman's voice echoed in his mind, face your fear. You must face your fear. With a surge of adrenaline, Jake forced himself to stand tall, despite the shadows constricting around him. He remembered the stories he had heard about the house and the spirit trapped within it. This was not just a delivery, it was a confrontation with something far more sinister. Get away from me, he shouted, summoning every ounce of courage he had. I won't be your victim. The dark figure laughed, a chilling sound that reverberated through the room. You think you can resist? You're already mine. But Jake refused to give in. He focused on the woman's presence, the sorrow in her eyes, and the urgency of her warning. I'm not afraid of you, he yelled, his voice echoing defiantly. I'm here to help her. As he spoke, he felt a warmth begin to radiate from within him, pushing back against the cold shadows. The woman's figure flickered, her expression shifting from despair to hope. You can do it. You have the power to break the curse. With renewed determination, Jake reached for the package he had delivered. He tore it open, revealing a collection of items, a small mirror, a candle, and a piece of parchment covered in strange symbols. He realized that these were not just random items, they were tools meant to confront the darkness. He grabbed the candle and lit it with a match from his pocket. The flame flickered to life, casting a warm glow that pushed back the shadows. I won't let you take me, he shouted, holding the candle high. I will free her. The dark figure recoiled, its form wavering as the light from the candle grew stronger. Jake turned to the mirror, holding it up to reflect the figure. You are nothing but a shadow. You have no power over me. The figure shrieked, a sound filled with rage and fear. The shadows began to dissipate, retreating from the light. The woman stepped closer, her form becoming more defined as the darkness receded. You're doing it. Keep going. Jake focused on the parchment, reading the incantation aloud. The words felt foreign on his tongue, but he spoke them with conviction. As he recited the final line, a blinding light erupted from the candle, engulfing the room. The dark figure howled in fury, its form disintegrating into wisps of shadow. The woman reached out to Jake, her eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you, she whispered, her voice now clear and strong. You freed me. As the light enveloped them, Jake felt a rush of energy, and the oppressive weight of the house lifted. The shadows vanished, and the room transformed, the decay replaced by warmth and light. The woman smiled, her spirit now free from the curse that had bound her for so long. With a final flash, the light faded, and Jake found himself standing outside the house, the package still clutched in his hand. The night air was cool and refreshing, and the oppressive dread that had filled him moments before was gone. He looked back at the house, now just an old, abandoned structure, devoid of the darkness that had once consumed it. Jake took a deep breath, feeling a sense of relief wash over him. He had faced his fears and emerged victorious. As he climbed back into his delivery van, he couldn't help but smile. He had not only completed a delivery but had also freed a trapped soul. Driving away from Hollow Road, Jake felt a newfound appreciation for life. He realized that sometimes, the scariest experiences could lead to the most profound transformations. He vowed to share his story, to warn others about the dangers that lurked in the shadows, and to remind them that courage could shine a light even in the darkest of places. From that night on, Jake continued his work as a delivery driver, but he approached each shift with a sense of purpose. He knew that every delivery could hold a story, and he was ready to face whatever came next, knowing that he had the strength to confront the darkness. Emily and Mark had just moved into their quaint suburban home a few months ago, eager to start their new life together. The neighborhood was quiet, with tree-lined streets and friendly neighbors. However, the recent death of Mrs. Henderson, an elderly woman who lived next door, cast a shadow over their excitement. Rumors swirled about her mysterious passing, with whispers of strange occurrences leading up to her death. One evening, as they settled in for a cozy night, a delivery truck pulled up outside their house. A young man hopped out, carrying a large package. "Delivery for Mrs. Henderson," he called out, glancing around. Emily and Mark exchanged puzzled looks. They hadn't seen anyone from the Henderson family since the funeral. We're not Mrs. Henderson," Mark replied, stepping outside. "She passed away last week." The delivery driver frowned, checking his clipboard. "I'm sorry. I must have the wrong address. But this package is definitely for her." "Maybe you should take it back," Emily suggested, feeling uneasy. The driver shrugged. "I can't. It's already been marked as delivered. You can keep it if you want." Reluctantly, they accepted the package, bringing it inside. It was heavy, wrapped in brown paper and tied with twine. As they set it on the kitchen table, a sense of foreboding washed over them. "Should we open it?" Emily asked, her voice tinged with apprehension. Mark hesitated but nodded. "Let's see what's inside." They carefully unwrapped the package, revealing a worn leather journal. The cover was cracked, and the pages were yellowed with age. As they flipped through it, they discovered that it belonged to Mrs. Henderson. The entries chronicled her life, but as they read further, the tone shifted dramatically. The first few pages detailed mundane events, grocery lists, garden plans, and family visits. But soon, the entries took a dark turn. Mrs. Henderson wrote about strange noises in the night, shadows moving in her peripheral vision, and an overwhelming sense of dread that had begun to consume her. The last few entries were frantic, filled with erratic handwriting and desperate pleas for help. "They're watching me," Emily read aloud, her voice trembling. "I can feel their eyes on me, even when I'm alone. I don't know how much longer I can take this." Mark's heart raced as he continued reading. "This is unsettling. It sounds like she was losing her mind." "Or maybe she was onto something," Emily replied, her brow furrowing. "What if there really was something wrong?" That night, as they tried to sleep, the atmosphere in their home felt heavy. The shadows in their bedrooms seemed to stretch and twist, and every creak of the house sent chills down their spines. Emily tossed and turned, unable to shake the feeling that they were being watched. The next day, they decided to investigate further. They visited the local library, hoping to find more information about Mrs. Henderson and her mysterious death. The librarian, an elderly woman with kind eyes, looked at them with concern when they mentioned the journal. Mrs. Henderson was a sweet lady, but she had her struggles, the librarian said softly. She often spoke of feeling watched, of hearing voices. Some thought she was just getting old, but others believed there was something more to it. As they left the library, Emily felt a growing sense of dread. What if whatever happened to her is happening to us now? She whispered. That night, they both experienced vivid nightmares. Emily dreamt of a dark figure standing at the foot of her bed, its eyes glowing with malice. Mark dreamt of being trapped in a room filled with shadows, unable to escape. They woke up in a cold sweat, their hearts racing. The following days were filled with increasing paranoia. They began to hear strange noises at night, whispers that seemed to echo through the walls and footsteps that followed them when they were alone. The journal's entries haunted them, and they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being drawn into Mrs. Henderson's madness. One evening, as they sat in the living room, Emily noticed something out of the corner of her eye. A shadow flitted past the window, and she felt a chill run down her spine. "Did you see that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mark nodded, his face pale. "I did. It's like, something is here with us." Desperate for answers, they returned to the journal, searching for clues. They found a final entry that sent shivers down their spines. "I can feel them closing in. If you find this, do not stay here. Leave while you still can." Panic set in as they realized they were trapped in a cycle of fear. They had to escape before it was too late. That night, as the shadows deepened around them, Emily and Mark made a plan. They would leave the house first thing in the morning. They couldn't stay in a place that felt so suffocating and dangerous. But as they prepared for bed, the atmosphere grew heavier, and the whispers intensified, echoing through the halls like a sinister lullaby. Just as they were about to turn off the lights, a loud crash echoed from the kitchen. They exchanged terrified glances. "What was that?" Mark asked, his voice trembling. "I don't know, but we need to check it out," Emily replied, her heart racing. They crept down the hallway, the darkness pressing in around them. As they reached the kitchen, they found the table overturned, the journal lying open on the floor, pages fluttering as if caught in an unseen wind. Mark bent down to pick it up, but as he did, a cold gust of air swept through the room, extinguishing the lights. They were plunged into darkness, and the whispers grew louder, swirling around them like a storm. "Get out!" a voice cried, echoing with desperation. "Emily!" Mark shouted, reaching for her hand. "We need to go." But as they turned to flee, the door slammed shut, trapping them inside. Panic surged through them as they pounded on the door, but it wouldn't budge. The shadows in the room thickened, coalescing into dark shapes that loomed closer, their eyes glinting with malice. "Help us!" Emily screamed, her voice breaking. "We didn't mean to intrude." Suddenly, the journal flew from Mark's hands, landing open on the floor. The pages turned rapidly, stopping on a final entry that glowed faintly in the darkness. "To break the curse, you must confront the darkness within," it read. "Face your fears, or be consumed by them." "Confront the darkness?" Mark repeated, his voice shaky. "What does that even mean?" Before they could ponder further, the shadows lunged at them, and the room filled with a cacophony of whispers, each one a fragment of Mrs. Henderson's torment. "You must leave! You must leave!" they cried, their voices blending into a terrifying chorus. In that moment, Emily felt a surge of determination. "We can't let this happen to us. We have to fight back." She grabbed the journal and shouted, "We're not afraid of you." As she spoke, the shadows hesitated, as if taken aback by her defiance. Mark joined her, his voice steadying. "We know what you are. You're just a manifestation of fear. You can't control us." The shadows writhed, and the room trembled. The whispers turned into anguished screams, and the dark figures began to dissolve, retreating from the light of their courage. Emily and Mark stood firm, holding on to each other, their resolve strengthening. "Face your fears," Emily shouted again, and in that moment, the shadows recoiled, revealing glimpses of the tormented souls trapped within. They were the remnants of those who had succumbed to the darkness, including Mrs. Henderson. "Help us," one of the figures cried, reaching out with a ghostly hand. "Free us from this torment." With a newfound sense of purpose, Emily and Mark focused on the journal, reading aloud the incantation they found within its pages. As they spoke the words, a brilliant light erupted from the journal, illuminating the room and pushing back the shadows. The dark figures shrieked, their forms disintegrating in the light. "No! You cannot escape," the voice of the dark entity roared, but it was too late. The light enveloped them, and with a final, deafening scream, the shadows vanished, leaving only silence in their wake. As the light faded, Emily and Mark found themselves standing in the kitchen, the overturned table righted, and the journal closed on the counter. The oppressive atmosphere had lifted, replaced by a sense of calm. They looked at each other, breathless and shaken, but alive. "We did it," Mark whispered, disbelief etched on his face. "We actually did it." Emily nodded, tears of relief streaming down her cheeks. "We faced the darkness together." The next morning, they packed their belongings and decided to leave the house for good. They couldn't shake the feeling. It was a quiet Friday night, and Sarah Collins found herself alone in her small apartment, the flickering light of the television casting shadows on the walls. After a long week at work, she craved comfort food, and nothing sounded better than a hot pizza. She picked up her phone and placed an order from her favorite local pizzeria, the one that always delivered late into the night. As she waited, Sarah settled onto the couch, scrolling through her social media feed. The clock ticked slowly, and the anticipation of the pizza made her stomach growl. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she heard a knock at the door. "Finally," she exclaimed, jumping up and rushing to the door. She opened it, but her excitement quickly turned to confusion. Standing before her was a delivery driver, but not just any driver, a ghostly figure clad in a tattered uniform, his face pale and expressionless. His eyes were hollow, and an unsettling chill filled the air. "Your pizza," he said in a voice that echoed as if coming from a great distance. He held out the box, and Sarah hesitated, her heart racing. Thanks," she stammered, taking the box from his hands. As she did, a wave of dread washed over her, and she felt an inexplicable connection to the figure. "Enjoy your meal," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, before turning and walking away. Sarah closed the door, her mind racing. Was she imagining things? She shook her head, trying to dismiss the encounter as a trick of the light. She set the pizza box on the kitchen counter and opened it, the delicious aroma wafting up to greet her. But as she took her first bite, a strange sensation washed over her. The flavors were rich and comforting, but with each bite, memories began to flood her mind, memories she had long buried. Suddenly, she was transported back to her childhood home, sitting at the dinner table with her family. Laughter filled the air, but it quickly turned to silence as she remembered the night her younger brother, Tommy, had gone missing. The search had lasted for days, but he was never found. The guilt of not being able to protect him had haunted her ever since. Sarah shook her head, trying to dispel the memories, but the pizza seemed to draw her deeper into her past. Each bite brought forth more vivid recollections, her parents' grief, the whispers of neighbors, the way her life had changed forever. She felt a knot tightening in her chest, a mix of sorrow and fear. As she continued to eat, the ghostly delivery driver's face flashed in her mind. "He knows," she whispered to herself, realizing that he was somehow connected to her past. The pizza was not just food, it was a conduit for her memories, forcing her to confront the pain she had tried to forget. With each slice, the memories grew more intense. She could hear her mother's sobs, see the empty room that had once belonged to Tommy, and feel the weight of her own guilt pressing down on her. "I should have been there," she cried, tears streaming down her face. "I should have protected him." Suddenly, the lights in her apartment flickered, and the temperature dropped. The ghostly figure appeared again, standing in the corner of the room, watching her with those hollow eyes. "You cannot escape your past," he said softly, his voice echoing in the silence. "You must face it." "Why are you doing this?" Sarah shouted, her heart racing. "What do you want from me?" "I am a reflection of your fears," he replied, stepping closer. "You cannot move forward until you confront the truth." In that moment, Sarah realized that the pizza was a manifestation of her guilt, a way for her to confront the unresolved pain of losing her brother. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her emotions crashing over her like a tidal wave. "I'm sorry, Tommy," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry I couldn't save you." The ghostly figure nodded, and as she spoke, the atmosphere in the room shifted. The shadows that had loomed over her began to recede, and the oppressive weight of guilt started to lift. "Let go of the burden," he urged. "Forgive yourself." With tears streaming down her face, Sarah took another bite of the pizza, this time savoring the flavors as she allowed herself to feel the grief and sorrow. She remembered the happy moments with her brother, the laughter, the games they played, the love they shared. She realized that while she couldn't change the past, she could honor his memory by letting go of the guilt that had consumed her. As she finished the last bite, the ghostly figure smiled gently, and the room filled with warmth. "You are free," he said, his complete it. GPT-4o Mini. Voice now soothing and calm. You have faced your fears and embraced the truth. Remember him with love, not guilt. With those words, the figure began to fade, the shadows lifting from the corners of the room. Sarah felt a profound sense of relief wash over her, as if a heavy weight had been lifted from her shoulders. The memories of her brother, once tinged with sorrow, now felt like a warm embrace, filled with love and joy. As the ghostly figure disappeared completely, Sarah wiped her tears and took a deep breath. The air felt lighter, and the oppressive atmosphere that had filled her apartment was gone. She looked around, feeling a sense of peace settle within her. In the days that followed, Sarah found herself reflecting on her experience. She decided to honor Tommy's memory by volunteering at a local children's shelter, helping kids who had faced their own struggles. She wanted to be a source of support for others, just as she wished she could have been for her brother. The pizza delivery had been a catalyst for healing, forcing her to confront the pain she had buried for so long. Each time she shared her story with others, she felt a little more of the burden lift, and she found strength in vulnerability. One evening, as she sat in her living room, she noticed a small framed photo of her and Tommy on the shelf. They were laughing, carefree, and full of life. A smile spread across her face as she picked it up, feeling a warmth in her heart. "I love you, Tommy," she whispered, knowing that he would always be a part of her. From that day on, Sarah embraced life with a renewed sense of purpose. She no longer allowed fear to dictate her actions. Instead, she chose to live fully, cherishing the memories of her brother while also creating new ones. The ghostly delivery driver had shown her the way, and she was grateful for the lesson learned. As she continued her journey of healing, Sarah often thought back to that fateful night. The phantom delivery had been a turning point, a moment that had changed her life forever. And while the memories of loss would always be a part of her, she now understood that love and forgiveness could coexist with grief. In the end, Sarah found solace in the knowledge that she had faced her fears and emerged stronger. The pizza had been more than just a meal, it had been a bridge to her past, leading her to a brighter future. And as she moved forward, she carried her brother's spirit with her, a guiding light in her heart. Ethan had been counting down the days until the release of the new gaming console. As an avid gamer, he had watched every trailer, read every review, and even joined online forums to discuss strategies for the games he was eager to play. When the day finally arrived, he wasted no time in ordering it online, eagerly anticipating its arrival. The package arrived 2 days later, wrapped in plain brown cardboard. Ethan tore it open, his heart racing with excitement. The console gleamed under the light, its sleek design promising hours of immersive gameplay. He quickly set it up in his living room, plugged it in, and booted it up. The screen flickered to life, displaying a vibrant logo that sent a thrill down his spine. As he navigated through the menus, he noticed something odd. The console seemed to hum with an energy that felt almost alive. Dismissing it as excitement, he selected the first game, a horror-themed adventure that had been the talk of the gaming community. Little did he know, this was the beginning of his descent into a nightmare. The moment he pressed start, the room around him warped and twisted. Ethan felt a jolt, as if he had been yanked from reality. He found himself standing in a dark, fog-laden forest, the air thick with an oppressive silence. Panic surged through him as he realized he was no longer in his living room. The console had transported him into the game. Ethan's heart raced as he looked around, the trees looming like twisted specters. Shadows danced at the edges of his vision, and a chill ran down his spine. He tried to call out, but his voice was swallowed by the eerie stillness. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the trees, sending him into a sprint. He ran blindly, branches clawing at his skin, until he stumbled into a clearing. In the center stood a grotesque figure, its eyes glowing with malice. It was the entity that fed on fear, a manifestation of all his darkest thoughts and insecurities. Ethan felt a wave of terror wash over him, paralyzing him in place. The entity grinned, revealing rows of jagged teeth, and whispered, "Welcome to your nightmare." Ethan's mind raced. He had to escape, but how? The entity thrived on his fear, growing stronger with every moment of dread. He remembered the gaming strategies he had learned over the years. This was just another boss battle, albeit a far more personal one. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to focus. He recalled the advice from his favorite streamers, face your fears head-on. With newfound determination, Ethan confronted the entity. "You don't control me," he shouted, his voice echoing through the clearing. The entity recoiled, momentarily taken aback by his defiance. Ethan began to fight back, using the skills he had honed in countless games. He dodged the entity's attacks, each one a manifestation of his fears, failure, rejection, loneliness. He countered with memories of triumph, moments when he had overcome obstacles in his life. With each successful dodge and counter, he felt the entity weaken. The battle raged on, and Ethan's resolve grew stronger. He remembered the friends he had made through gaming, the support they had given him during tough times. He channeled that strength, visualizing their faces as he fought. The entity shrieked in frustration, its form flickering as it struggled to maintain its grip on him. Finally, with one last surge of courage, Ethan unleashed a powerful attack, a culmination of all his fears faced and conquered. The entity howled, its form disintegrating into shadows that dissipated into the night. As it vanished, Ethan felt a rush of freedom, the oppressive weight lifting from his chest. In an instant, he was back in his living room, the console humming quietly beside him. He blinked, disoriented but alive. The screen displayed a message, "Congratulations. You have defeated the nightmare." Ethan sat back, heart racing, a mix of relief and exhilaration flooding through him. He had faced his fears and emerged victorious. But as he looked at the console, a shiver ran down his spine. He knew he had to be careful. The console was powerful, and while he had won this battle, the war against his fears was far from over. With a newfound respect for the game, and a determination to confront his fears in the real world, Ethan powered down the console. He would return to it, but not without preparation. He had learned that sometimes, the scariest monsters are the ones we carry within ourselves. And with that knowledge, he felt ready to face whatever came next. Ethan took a moment to collect himself, the adrenaline still coursing through his veins. The living room felt eerily quiet, the only sound the soft hum of the console. He glanced at the screen, which now displayed a simple menu, but the vibrant colors seemed muted compared to the vivid nightmare he had just escaped. He knew he couldn't just dive back into the game without a plan. The experience had shaken him, but it had also ignited a fire within him. He had faced his fears in a way he never thought possible, and now he wanted to harness that strength in his everyday life. Over the next few days, Ethan found himself reflecting on the battle he had fought. He began journaling, documenting not only his gaming experiences but also his personal fears and insecurities. He wrote about the moments that had made him feel small, the times he had doubted himself, and the challenges he had overcome. Each entry was cathartic, a way to confront the shadows that had lingered in his mind. As he wrote, he also reached out to friends he hadn't spoken to in a while. He shared his experience with the cursed console, and to his surprise, they were eager to listen. They opened up about their own fears and struggles, creating a bond that had been missing for too long. The conversations were healing, and Ethan felt a sense of community that he had often overlooked in his solitary gaming sessions. With each passing day, Ethan grew more confident. He started to tackle small challenges in his life that he had previously avoided. He joined a local gaming club, where he met new people who shared his passion. He even signed up for a public speaking workshop, something he had always dreaded but now saw as an opportunity to confront his fear of judgment. But the console still loomed in the back of his mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that it was waiting for him, ready to pull him back into its nightmarish world. One evening, after a particularly uplifting day at the gaming club, he decided it was time to face the console again. He needed to understand its power and ensure it wouldn't control him. As he powered it on, the familiar hum filled the room, and the screen flickered to life. This time, he felt a sense of determination rather than dread. He navigated to the game he had played before, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. The moment he pressed start, the world around him shifted once more, but this time he was prepared. The dark forest materialized, but Ethan stood tall, his heart steady. The entity appeared again, its eyes glinting with malice, but he was no longer the frightened gamer who had stumbled into this nightmare. He had faced his fears, and he was ready to fight. Not this time, he declared, his voice strong and unwavering. The entity lunged at him, but Ethan sidestepped, recalling the strategies he had practiced. He fought back with a newfound confidence, using the skills he had honed in both the game and his life. Each attack he dodged was met with a counter that drew on the strength he had built through his recent experiences. As the battle raged on, Ethan felt the entity's power waning. He unleashed a flurry of attacks, each one fueled by the support of his friends and the courage he had found within himself. The entity howled in frustration, its form flickering as it struggled to maintain its grip on him. With one final, powerful strike, Ethan unleashed everything he had learned. The entity screamed, its form disintegrating into a cloud of shadows that faded into the darkness. As the last remnants of its power dissipated, Ethan felt a wave of relief wash over him. He had not only defeated the entity but had also conquered the fears that had haunted him for so long. In an instant, he was back in his living room, the console humming quietly beside him. The screen displayed a new message: "You have conquered your fears. The curse is broken." Ethan sat back, a smile spreading across his face. He had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, not just in the game but in his life. The console, once a source of terror, had become a catalyst for growth and self-discovery. From that day forward, Ethan approached life with a renewed sense of purpose. He continued to game, but now he did so with friends, sharing experiences and building connections. He embraced challenges, both in gaming and in reality. It was a dreary Tuesday afternoon when Mia Thompson returned home from school, her backpack slung over one shoulder and her mind preoccupied with the usual teenage worries: homework, friendships, and the upcoming dance. As she stepped through the front door, she noticed a peculiar package sitting on the kitchen table. It was wrapped in blood-red paper, stark against the pale wood of the table. Curiosity piqued, Mia approached the package, her heart racing with a mix of excitement and apprehension. There was no return address, no indication of who might have sent it. She carefully peeled back the wrapping, revealing a plain cardboard box. Inside, she found a collection of old photographs, each one depicting gruesome scenes from her town's history. The first photograph showed a dilapidated house engulfed in flames, smoke billowing into the night sky. The second captured a group of townsfolk gathered around a gallows, their faces twisted in a mix of horror and fascination. Each image was more disturbing than the last: murders, accidents, and tragedies that had long been buried in the town's past. Mia's stomach churned as she flipped through the photographs, her fingers trembling. She recognized some of the locations depicted in the images: the old mill by the river, the abandoned church on the outskirts of town, and the very house where she lived. A chill ran down her spine as she realized that these events were not just relics of history, they were part of a dark cycle that seemed to repeat itself. As she examined the photographs more closely, she noticed something unsettling. Each image had a date scribbled in the corner, and as she compared them to the current date, she realized that the events were set to repeat. The next tragedy was only days away. Mia's heart raced as she pieced together the implications. She had to uncover the truth behind these photographs before it was too late. She grabbed her phone and began researching the events depicted in the images, diving into the town's history. The more she learned, the more she felt a sense of dread settle over her. The town had a dark past, filled with secrets that many preferred to forget. There were whispers of a curse, a cycle of violence that had plagued the town for generations. Each tragedy seemed to be linked to a specific location, and Mia realized that she needed to visit these sites to uncover the truth. The next day, armed with her camera and a notebook, Mia set out to explore the locations from the photographs. The old mill was her first stop. As she approached, the air grew heavy with an unsettling silence. The building loomed before her, its windows shattered and its walls covered in graffiti. She stepped inside, the floor creaking beneath her feet. As she wandered through the darkened rooms, she felt a presence watching her. Shadows danced in the corners of her vision, and she could hear faint whispers echoing through the halls. Suddenly, a cold breeze swept through the mill, sending a shiver down her spine. She snapped a few photos, hoping to capture something that might help her understand the connection between the past and the present. Next, she visited the abandoned church. The air was thick with dust, and the scent of decay lingered in the corners. As she explored, she stumbled upon a hidden room in the basement. Inside, she found old journals and newspaper clippings detailing the town's tragedies. One entry caught her eye, a warning about a ritual that had been performed to appease the spirits of those wronged in the past. It spoke of a blood sacrifice that would ensure the cycle continued. Mia's heart raced as she realized the implications. The photographs were not just a record of the past, they were a warning. If she didn't act quickly, she could become the next victim of the curse. Determined to break the cycle, Mia returned home and gathered her friends, Sarah and Jake. She shared her findings, and together they devised a plan to confront the curse head-on. They would perform a counter-ritual to appease the spirits and put an end to the cycle of violence. On the night of the next predicted tragedy, they gathered at the old mill, armed with candles, salt, and the items they believed would help them. As they set up the ritual, the air grew heavy with tension. Mia could feel the presence of the spirits surrounding them, their energy crackling in the air. As they began the ritual, chanting the words from the journal, the ground trembled beneath them. Shadows swirled around the mill, and the temperature dropped dramatically. Mia's heart raced as she felt the weight of the spirits pressing down on her. She focused on the words, pouring her energy into the chant, determined to break the cycle. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, a ghostly apparition of a woman, her face twisted in anguish. Mia felt a surge of fear, but she stood her ground. "We're here to help you," she shouted, her voice steady despite the terror coursing through her veins. "We want to end the pain and suffering. We want to set you free." The apparition paused, its hollow eyes locking onto Mia's. For a moment, the air was thick with silence, the shadows swirling around them as if waiting for a response. The ghostly figure seemed to waver, caught between the world of the living and the realm of the lost. Mia continued to chant, her friends joining in, their voices rising in unison. The energy in the room intensified, and the shadows began to coalesce into a swirling vortex. The woman's expression shifted from anguish to something resembling hope. Mia could feel the weight of the spirit's sorrow, their pain echoing through the ages. As they reached the climax of the ritual, the ground shook violently, and a deafening roar filled the air. The shadows surged forward, enveloping the group in darkness. Mia squeezed her eyes shut, focusing on the words of the chant, willing the spirits to listen. "Let go of your pain. Find peace," she cried, pouring every ounce of her energy into the words. The shadows began to dissipate, and the apparition of the woman stepped closer, her face softening as she reached out toward Mia. In that moment, Mia felt a connection, a shared understanding of loss and suffering. The woman's hand brushed against Mia's, and a wave of warmth flooded through her. The shadows around them began to dissolve, and the oppressive weight lifted, replaced by a sense of calm. With one final chant, the group shouted the last words of the ritual, and the air exploded with light. The shadows vanished, and the apparition smiled, her face radiant with relief. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice echoing like a gentle breeze. "You have freed us." As the light faded, Mia opened her eyes to find the old mill bathed in a warm glow. The oppressive atmosphere had lifted, and the air felt lighter, as if a great burden had been released. The cycle of violence had been broken. Exhausted but triumphant, Mia and her friends stumbled out of the mill, the first rays of dawn breaking over the horizon. They stood together, breathing in the fresh morning air, feeling a sense of accomplishment wash over them. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. In the days that followed, Mia noticed a change in the town. The whispers of the past seemed to fade, and the weight of the tragedies that had haunted the community began to lift. People spoke of the old stories with a sense of closure, as if the spirits had finally found peace. Mia kept the photographs, but they no longer felt like a curse. Instead, they served as a reminder of the strength she had found within herself and the bonds she had forged with her friends. She had faced the darkness and emerged not just as a survivor, but as a beacon of hope for her town. As she walked through the streets, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The blood-red package had brought her face to face with the town's history, but it had also led her to uncover her own strength and resilience. She knew that while the past could not be changed, the future was hers to shape. With her friends by her side, Mia looked forward to the adventures that awaited her, ready to embrace life with open arms and a heart full of courage. The cycle had been broken, and the town was finally free to heal. It was a chilly Friday evening when a group of friends, Emma, Jake, Sarah, and Tom, gathered at Emma's house for their long-awaited movie night. They had planned this for weeks, excited to binge-watch their favorite horror films and indulge in greasy takeout. As the sun dipped below the horizon, they settled into the living room, blankets piled high and snacks spread across the coffee table. "Who's ordering?" Jake asked, scrolling through the food delivery app on his phone. "I'll do it," Emma replied, taking the phone from him. "Let's get that new pizza place. I've heard great things." After placing the order, they settled in for the first movie, the room filled with laughter and the flickering glow of the screen. About 30 minutes later, the doorbell rang, interrupting their fun. Emma jumped up to answer it, her excitement palpable. When she opened the door, she was greeted by a tall, lanky figure dressed in a dark uniform. The delivery boy had an unsettling smile, his eyes glinting with an intensity that made Emma's stomach twist. "Pizza for the movie night?" he asked, his voice smooth yet oddly dissonant. "Yeah, that's us," Emma replied, trying to shake off the unease. She took the pizza from him, but as she did, she noticed something strange. The boy's gaze lingered on her, as if he were searching for something deeper than just a transaction. "Enjoy your night," he said, his smile widening. "I know you will." Emma frowned, closing the door behind her. "That guy was weird," she said, returning to the living room. "Did he say something strange?" Sarah asked, her brow furrowing. "Just that he knew we'd enjoy our night," Emma replied, shrugging it off. "Let's just eat." As they dug into the pizza, the atmosphere shifted. The friends laughed and joked, but an undercurrent of tension began to weave through their conversations. It was as if the delivery boy's presence had cast a shadow over their fun. Halfway through the second movie, the doorbell rang again. This time, it was a text message from the delivery boy, sent to the group chat. "Hope you're enjoying the show. I know all your secrets." The room fell silent, and the friends exchanged uneasy glances. "What the hell?" Tom said, pulling out his phone to check the message. "How does he know about us?" "Maybe it's just a prank," Jake suggested, though his voice lacked conviction. "Or maybe he's just a creepy delivery guy," Sarah added, her eyes darting toward the window as if expecting him to be lurking outside. As the night wore on, the delivery boy continued to send cryptic messages, each one revealing a hidden secret about each of them. Emma, remember that time you cheated on your math test? I do. Jake, I know about the girl you ghosted last summer. Sarah, your little secret with Tom isn't as secret as you think. With each revelation, the tension in the room escalated. The friends felt exposed, their laughter replaced by nervous glances and whispered accusations. How does he know this stuff? Emma asked, her voice trembling. I don't know, but we need to stop this, Tom said, his face pale. We should call the police. Just as he reached for his phone, another message came through. You can't escape your sins. I'm here to collect. Panic surged through the group. What does that even mean? Sarah cried, her eyes wide with fear. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and the room plunged into darkness. The friends scrambled to find their phones, using the dim light to illuminate the space. This isn't funny. Jake shouted, his voice echoing in the silence. Then, the door creaked open, and the delivery boy stepped inside, his figure silhouetted against the faint light. You've all been so careless, he said, his voice low and menacing. Your secrets have a way of catching up with you. Get out. Emma yelled, her heart racing. We didn't do anything wrong. The delivery boy stepped closer, his smile fading into a cold, calculating expression. You think you can hide from the truth? Each of you has a debt to pay, and I'm here to collect. The friends huddled together, fear coursing through them. What do you want? Tom demanded, his voice shaking. I want you to confront your sins, the delivery boy replied, his eyes glinting with a predatory gleam. Only then can you be free. With that, the lights flickered back on, and the delivery boy vanished, leaving the friends in stunned silence. The atmosphere was thick with dread, and they could feel the weight of their secrets pressing down on them like a suffocating blanket. What just happened? Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. Is he serious? Emma shook her head, trying to process the chaos. We need to talk about this. We can't just ignore it. Fine, Jake said, his voice rising in frustration. Let's get everything out in the open. If he knows our secrets, we might as well face them. The group sat in a tight circle, the tension palpable. One by one, they began to share their hidden truths, the weight of their secrets spilling out into the open. I cheated on that math test because I was terrified of failing, Emma admitted, her voice trembling. I thought I'd let everyone down if I didn't get good grades. I ghosted that girl because I was too scared to commit, Jake confessed, running a hand through his hair. I didn't want to hurt her, but I ended up hurting her more. Sarah took a deep breath. And I kissed Tom when I was still dating someone else. I thought it was just a mistake, but it felt so real. I didn't know how to tell you, Tom. Tom's expression darkened, but he nodded. I get it. I've made mistakes too. I've lied about my feelings to keep the peace. I didn't want to hurt anyone, but I ended up hurting everyone. As they shared their secrets, the atmosphere in the room began to shift. The weight of their hidden sins felt lighter, as if the act of confessing had released some of the tension that had built up. They were no longer just friends, they were a support system, united in their flaws and vulnerabilities. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, and the delivery boy reappeared, this time standing at the edge of the living room. Interesting, he said, his voice dripping with amusement. "You've chosen to confront your sins. But are you ready to face the consequences? What do you want from us?" Emma demanded, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. "I want you to understand that every action has a reaction," he replied, stepping closer. "You can't just brush your sins under the rug and expect them to disappear. They will always come back to haunt you." "Then what do we do?" Jake asked, desperation creeping into his voice. "Redemption is not easy," the delivery boy said, his expression shifting to one of seriousness. "You must make amends. Each of you has a chance to right your wrongs. Only then can you truly be free." With that, he handed Emma a small envelope. "Inside, you'll find instructions for how to make things right." That
But
felt
be warned,
both heavy
the
and
path
liberating.
to redemption is fraught with
Tom
challenges.
stood alone in the cemetery.
You must
the
be
weight
willing
of the
to
world
face the
lifted from his
consequences
shoulders
of your actions.
He felt a sense
As
of
the delivery boy
knowing
turned to
he had
leave,
played a part
he
in
paused at the
reuniting
door.
two lost souls. Remember, the past
he made
can't
his
be
way
changed,
back to the
but
security
future
office,
is yours
the
to
night
shape.
felt
different. Choose wisely.
The shadows that had once seemed
With that,
ominous now
he vanished
felt like
into
gentle
the night,
reminders
leaving
of
the
the
friends
lives
that
that
had
had
been
been
lived
lived
and
and
loved
loved.
once more. The sounds
Emma
of the cemetery,
opened the envelope,
the rustling
revealing
leaves,
a list of
the distant
tasks
hoot
for
of
each
an
of
owl,
them,
ways
were
to
no longer
confront their
eerie
past
but rather
mistakes
comforting,
and seek
a
forgiveness.
symphony
of the past. "I can't believe
From
this
that
is
night
happening."
on,
Tom
Sarah
approached
said,
his job
her
with a
voice
renewed
shaking.
sense of purpose. "What if we can't do it?" He continued to patrol
We
the
have to
cemetery,
try,
but
Tom
now he
replied,
did so with
with deep
determination
respect
in
for
his
the
stories
eyes
that lay beneath the earth. "We owe it to ourselves
He
and to
often
the people
found
we've
himself
served." Speaking to the spirits,
The group
sharing
spent the
his
rest of the
thoughts
night
and
discussing
feelings,
their tasks,
and he felt a
each
connection
one
to
more
the lives
daunting
that
than
had
the
come
last.
before him. The
They made a
cemetery
pact
became
to
a
support
place of
each other
solace
through
for
the
him,
process,
a reminder
vowing
that
to
love
face their
transcends
fears
time and
and
seek
space.
redemption together. And though
Over
he
the
never
next few
saw
weeks,
Elena or
they
Thomas
embarked
again,
on their individual
he knew
journeys.
they were at peace. Their
Emma
spirits
reached out to her
intertwined in the
teacher to
eternal
confess
embrace
about
of
the
love.
cheating,
Offering to
As the
retake
seasons
exam.
changed and the years passed,
Jake contacted
Tom would
the girl
often
he had
reflect on
ghosted,
that fateful
apologizing for his behavior
He
and
understood
explaining
that the
his
graveyard
fears. Was not just a resting
Sarah
place for the
confronted
dead.
her ex-boyfriend,
It was a sanctuary
admitting
for
her
memories,
mistake and
a
seeking
testament to the
forgiveness.
enduring power of love.
Tom
and a
had a
reminder that
heart-to-heart
even
with
in the
his
darkest
friends,
of places,
opening up about
light
his
could still
feelings
shine
and
the
through.
lies he had told. Each step was challenging, but with every act of honesty and courage, they felt lighter. The burden of their secrets began to lift, replaced by a sense of empowerment and growth. They learned that facing their pasts was not just about seeking forgiveness from others, but also about forgiving themselves. As they completed their tasks, the group grew closer, their bond strengthened by the shared experience of confronting their sins. They realized that the delivery boy had not been a harbinger of doom, but rather a catalyst for change, a reminder